Good day, learners. Hope you guys are good. In today's video, we're going to be doing a part 2 on our exam type questions for algebra, right? In today's video, we're going to be specifically doing questions where they were going to ask you to solve for x, and also we're going to be doing one example of a simultaneous equation and how you would approach that. So without wasting any time, let's get straight into it. For question 1, let's say they ask you to solve for x, right? So your question is px plus qx equals a. So in this instance, the first thing you would have to do, you would have to look at these first terms, right? And what do they have in common? They have x, right? So the first thing you have to do here is you have to factorize. And the common variable between these two terms is x. You're going to be left with p, and you're going to also be left with q. The question says solve for x, meaning we want to find ourselves in a situation where essentially on one side of the equation, we're going to be left with an x. So what you have to do in this instance, divide both sides by pq. Sorry for this ugly handwriting. And then once you do this, you're going to be left with x is equal a divided by p plus q, and that's your final answer, right? So for question 2, let's say they say 2x to the power of 2 minus 5x plus 2 equals 0. So the first thing you'll notice is that we have a trinomial. And also, the other thing that you'll have to notice is that the leading coefficient of this trinomial is greater than 1. This means that how we approach this will be different from how we approached it in the previous session, if you watched the previous session. How exactly are we going to approach this? So there's a method that I'm going to teach you, and it's going to help you, right? First, draw an x. And after you draw this x, right, on top, you must note that it is your a times c, right? And then at the bottom, write b. So a, c, b describe the coefficients. So a is here, is this one, right? B is this one. And then C, let me choose a different color, C. So 2 times 2, and that will give you 4. So this and this, A times C is 4, and then B is equal to 5 or minus 5. Let me change the color also. So what are the factors of 4 such that you will get minus 5? It is 4 or negative 4 and negative 1. So A times C gives you 4. The factors of this, minus 4 minus 1 will give you minus 5. How are we going to write this as an equation? 2x squared minus 4x minus x, which is minus 1x, plus 2 equals to 0. So we are done with the first part of the equation, right? How do we go on from here? You factorize by grouping. So essentially, like how we did in the previous session, you group these two first, the first two terms together and the last two terms together, and try to factor them out. So if you try to do that, you look at these first two. What's the common factor between the two? You have 2x. If you factor out 2x, you're left with x. You're also left with minus 2. Right. if you look at the next two terms, what is the common factor? It is a -1, because when you factor out -1, you're going to be left with a positive x and a -2. All right? And remember, they still have to be equal to 0 because this is an equation. You're not simplifying, you're solving for x. Right. So you look at these two, what's the common factor between the two? It is x minus 2, right? And then take these two, 2x minus 1, still equals to 0, right? Now it means our equation, or our equation is going to have two answers. So you're going to say x minus 2 equals to 0, or 2x minus 1 equals to 0. This one, our answer will be 2, because you're going to take this -2 and move it over to the next side. And if you move it over to the other side, it's going to be a positive. So x is equal to 2. And then here, you're going to take this one, move it over to the other side. It's going to give you a +1. You still have 2 in front of here, so meaning you have to divide both sides by 2. And then if you divide both sides by 2, it means you're going to be left with x 1 over 2. So this is how you're going to solve for this, right? Hope that makes sense. So for this one, they might say 1 over 2 to the power of 3x plus 1 is equals to 32. At first glance, right, when you find something like this, you have to invert this 1 over 2 such that you have the same base on each side, right? How are you going to do that? You're going to say 2 to the power of -1 and say 3x plus 1 equals to this one. How can you represent 32 when you're using 2 as your base? To the power of 5. Now, okay, we can also take it a step further. I don't think that would be necessary, but I like to simplify things. If you take this +1 and multiply with the base that's outside the bracket, you're going to have 2 to the power of -3x -1 equals to 2 to the power of 5. Right. Now that we have the same base, we can now solve for x, right? So you're going to say -3x minus 1 equals to 5. To make things easy, you're going to divide every single term by -1, and that will leave you with 3x plus 1 equals -5. You take this one, jump it over to the next side, group like terms together. You're going to be left with 3x minus 5 minus 1, which is the same as -6. And then if you divide both sides by 3, you're going to be left with 3 equals -2. And that's your final answer. Obviously, this is a long try. I could have shortened it, but I feel like if you are someone who struggles with numbers like me, I prefer to write everything down so that it's simple for me, right? The last time I wrote exams, I remember they used to give us a piece of paper to scribble on the side. You can write these steps on the side if you feel like they're not necessary, or if they're not going to mark them on your paper, because I know these kinds of questions usually account for like 3 marks. So it might not be necessary for you to write all of these steps. But like if you're someone who struggles with this, especially in an exam where you're under pressure and you might make small mistakes, I suggest that you write all of these steps on the side and then you condense them on a piece of paper. So for example, you can take out this and then out of the actual answer sheet, you can also take out this process, right? So these two, you can take them out, and then you're only left with this. So they're gonna mark this, and then this. So 3, 4, somewhere there, right? But yeah, so now let's, for the sake of time, do a question where they might ask you to solve for a simultaneous equation. We have 5x plus 4y equals 21, and 2x equals 3 minus y. First thing we're going to do is we're going to label both of these equations. We're going to label them equation 1 and equation 2. Right. That's step 1. Step 2, you're going to look at both of these equations, equation 1 and equation 2. Look at the variables, right? X and y, x and y. Think of both of these equations, which one is easier to take a variable and isolate? So if you look at x, y in this equation and x, y in this equation, which variable is easier to isolate? This y is easier to isolate because it does not have a coefficient, right? So you're going to take this equation, 2x equals 3 minus y, and we're going to make y the subject of the equation, right? So how are we going to do it? First of all, we're going to divide all of these terms by -1. So it's going to leave you with minus 2x equals minus 3 plus y. And then you're going to isolate the y. So you're going to take this -3 and move it to the other side. It's going to leave you with y is equals to minus 2x plus 3. Are we good? And then you're going to take this u equation and label it 3. Step 1 done. Step 2 done. Now, we're going to take this new equation, which is equation 3, and you're going to sub equation 3 into the equation that you haven't touched, which is equation 1. So wherever there is y in this equation, instead of writing the y, you're going to write minus 2x plus 3. So it's 5x plus 4. Instead of writing y, you write plus 3 is equals to 21, right? 5x, positive and negative will give you a negative. A negative 4 times 2 is 8x. Positive and a positive is positive. 4 and 3 is 12, equals to 21. Group the like terms. This means you're going to be left with 5x minus 8x. And then on the other side, you're going to have 21. Take this 12 to the other side, it's going to be a negative 12. So 5x minus 8 is minus 3x. And then 21 minus 12 is 9. Divide both sides by -3. You are left with x is equals to 9, right? So now you note this as well and say, well, you don't have to write it on your actual exam paper. So we've kind of solved for x. Still have to solve for y. So you're going to take this x and substitute it in the equation 2. So we've dealt with equation 1, we've dealt with equation 3, equation 2 has now been built, right? So in the place of x in this equation, you're going to write 9, right? That is 2. in the place of x, you write 9 equals to 3 minus y. Oh, sorry guys. Here our answer is 3. Oh, I almost made a mistake. There you write 3. Sorry guys, it's negative 3. If any one of you picked out on that mistake, it means you guys are paying attention. For the ones who haven't picked out on that mistake, you gotta pay more attention, right? Because these kind of mistakes can also happen in an exam. So if you don't pay attention, you might get a wrong answer while you had the right train of thought, right? So anyway, let's see happen. Minus 2 times minus 3 is minus 6. Y. Divide all of these terms by a negative 1 to make this y positive. Or you can take this y, bring it over to the other side, and then leave 3 here, take the 6, move it over to the other side, right? And then now y is equals to 9. So how are you going to write this as a final answer? Minus 3, 9. And then we've solved the simultaneous equation.